Okay, hi guys. So we're gonna again start with the tutorial. Okay. So in the like last section, we saw that we ran the React app, and let's see the what does the React app consist of. Okay. So this is a directory where we initiated the React app. Okay, let's see what it has. Okay, so it has something called a node underscore modules. Okay, so if you look at this name, it's pretty clear what this directory holds, right? It holds the dependencies, it holds the modules that you are using in your project. So for example, if you want to use Firebase, it will be stored in this module. For example, if you want to use bcrypt, so bcrypt is a you can say a hashing library. So yeah, it will be stored in node underscore modules. So if we open it, you can see there are a lot of things, like a lot of softwares, lot of folders here, and everything is somewhat used in our project. So you actually don't need to take care, like you don't need to put much stress on understanding what all the software does. You can just say that it holds your dependencies. Okay, now public. So we will come onto this public directly later. So let's go to src. So what is src? Src, you can say, is a short form for source. So what is source? So this is the actual code that the user wants to execute, that the user wants to run. Okay, so this holds all those files. We'll again come back to this later. Now let's jump on to Git Ignore. So Git Ignore, as we know, that this is a Git file, so which basically tells all the repositories that we don't want to push on our branch. Okay, so if you don't know about this, you can read about this. What .git ignore does. So it's basically needed by the git command. Okay, package.json we have discussed slightly earlier, and we will see it with examples how it is working. Okay, readme.md is a markdown file where you can set up your instructions. So there are a few instructions that are already being set up by create react app, as we executed in the earlier section. Yeah. So pack yarn.log. So yarn, just like npm, is another package manager. And the funny thing is, the full form of yarn is yet another package manager. I hopefully this is a full form. Let me check once. Yarn full form. Okay, yeah, yet another resource negotiator. Okay, this was a it's like a kind of funny name, but yeah. So this is similar to npm yarn, and you can also do. You have to first install yarn if you want to use yarn, and there are some drawbacks, some good things about yarn, and then some. There are some drawbacks and good things about npm. I guess you can start with npm. Then, if you want to move on to yarn, you can check it out how you're able to do it. Okay, we will use npm. Okay, it's just a package manager. Okay, now we will go on to source. Let's see what other things it has. Okay, it has. Okay, we can see a file that we know about, a css file. Let's see what's the content. We can see that it's a basic css. It's what you write every day, right? It's a basic css. Yeah, and we'll be using css. It's yeah. And then there's a js file. Okay, now you will see something different. You will see html tags inside a js file. Okay, this is a react novelty. Okay, this is where react starts. So what react says is that you have to make these files with the extension or a JSX extension, which is just a abbreviated form of differentiating JS files from JSX. So you can also write JSX as an extension. Okay, so yeah, you can see that there's a function. Okay, first of all, there's a function. You have to define a function or a class, but I'll stick to functions in this tutorial. You have to define a function, then you have to give a name, and then you have to return something. So this, whatever you return, can be of two types. Okay, first of all, it can be a UI element, or you can return some types. So, for example, what I mean by type, What I mean by types is int, double, all that basic stuff you have learned in Java, Python, and C++. You can either return UI or you can return types, right? There are these kind of functions in you can say React. Okay, so here we are returning UI. How we know we are returning UI? Because we're using HTML elements. You can see that we are using a div, you're using a header and everything. So basically we are returning a UI inside this function app. Okay, so you can directly write HTML inside this function, which you want to display on your website. Okay, okay. Now, whenever you want to add a class to your HTML tag, you cannot use class in React. Why is it so? Because just like in other languages, there are certain keywords. Similarly, class is a keyword in JavaScript. Okay, so you cannot directly write class here. So instead, what React says, instead of writing class, you can say class name. Okay, so you just have to write this fixed variable class name, and then you can put your class name after the equal to. Okay, so class is a keyword here. Yeah. So and other things are same. You can directly how you use a image tag in HTML. In the same way you can use it here. You can in the same way you can use the p tag. You can use the a tags. You can use the header tags and everything. Okay. Yeah. Now we go on to import. So this is where the fun begins. In the React website, it said that okay, let's say we're going to learn React. Yeah, on the website it says component based, and it's called declarative. Okay, so these are the two main features of React. Let's discuss what is it. Okay, so in React, you can import similar functions. You can import the UI functions. You can import the init. Sorry, I mean you can import the type functions and you can import the UI functions directly into other files and start using it. Okay, and similarly, you can import. Let's see, you can import. What are the things you can import? You can import images. You can import UI functions. Okay, you can import type functions. Okay, you can import CSS. Okay, you can import all these things and start using it. Okay, so for example, if you want to add a CSS file which is specifically related to these UI elements. So for example, if you want to apply a CSS to a element whose class name is app, okay, so you first of all need to import that CSS file, and then you go onto your CSS file and do something like this. Dot, similarly, just as you did in HTML CSS, in the same way you have to do this. You have to mention the period and dot, I mean, and then you put the class name and then the styles. Okay, just the thing is, instead of using the link tags as you have used in your HTML CSS tutorial, you have to use the import statement. Okay, it's I think more clear and declarative. Okay, you get the declarative part. Yeah. So when you have to import images which are in the form of PNG, SVG, JPEG, you do something like this. Okay. First of all, which file you want to import and what alias you want to give to that file. So import logo. So logo is the alias, or you can say a variable that is assigned to this file that we have imported. So we can refer to this SVG using this variable, or you can say the imported alias using in this case it is logo. So as we can see, we have directly put logo in the src attribute of the image. And if you go on to check the website, this is the svg that we have imported and loaded in the image tag. Okay. Yeah, so you can for now ignore this app.test.js. Let's move on to index.js. Okay. Now, please pay attention. Like, this is a small detail, or you can say most tutorials don't discuss about what is happening in this index.js or what is happening in React in general. Okay. So let's see it with a diagram. Okay. So for example, whenever we're using a HTML file, sorry for my bad handwriting. Yeah. So whenever we're using an HTML file, okay. So for example, this is our HTML file, okay. Or for example, take this as an example. So this is an HTML file, and if we go to inspect, okay, we can see our HTML file. But there's something that is being handled by JavaScript. Okay, so this is the functionality that is handled. It is handled by JavaScript. And how we are able to use this JavaScript? Because we have imported, or you can say we have linked. In React, you say you have imported, and in normal HTML CSS, you can say that we have linked. We have linked the JavaScript file to our HTML file using the script tag. Okay? Yeah. Yes. So basically, JavaScript file is adding some functionality to our website. Okay, got it. I hope you have got it. Yeah. So we are adding some JS to our HTML using the script tag. So what is React doing? Sorry for the C. Yeah. So what is React doing? So React is saying that you have an HTML file. Okay. I'll show you where this HTML file is. You have an HTML file. Okay. And whatever stuff. So what is this stuff I'm talking about? So this is the JS files, and you can say the UI elements. Okay. Whatever functionality you have to add to this file. Okay. You can do it using a JS file. Okay. So whatever functionality, whatever UI elements I want to add to this HTML file, you can add it using a JS file. You can say a JavaScript file. Not exactly a JavaScript file, you can say a JSX file. So JSX is basically a wrapper. You can say adds more functionality to JavaScript. How it does so? It basically allows you to write HTML inside JavaScript. So this is basically JSX syntax. Whenever you're writing HTML inside JavaScript directly, it is basically kind of a JSX. Okay. So so what React says, you write certain files, a set of files in JSX, and you directly use import those in your HTML document. So whenever in the browser you are using HTML document, you are accessing this HTML document, all these other files will be directly linked to your HTML document, and using these files your UI will also come up. Okay, now let's see how it is happening. Okay, let's see a demo. So if we go to inspect element, okay, now okay, if I do if I go to the network tab, okay, and do a full refresh, I have done a refresh. Okay, it can be reached. Oh, sorry, I have closed this. Let me run it again. So how do we do it? Npm start. Yeah, it has started. uh, it's compiling right now. Okay, it's taking much time. Yeah, you can say it's starting a development server. Yeah, we can close this and we can close this also. Yeah, our project is open, and now we go on to inspect element and to the network tab. Let's do a full refresh to see what files we're importing. Okay, you can see something called a bundle.js. Okay, yeah. So let's make it slightly bigger. Okay, now you can see there are three files that we are linking to our HTML file. So these are basically the functionality or the UI elements that we are adding to a HTML file. Okay, so in React, there's only a small template in HTML, and all other stuff are being linked using JS files. Okay, and these JS files are not normal files. Firstly, we wrote our code in JSX, which was compiled. Whenever we run this npm run start, you can say compiled successfully. What do you mean by compiled? So whenever you mention the term compile, you say that you're changing the state of the code from one format to another, right? So in JavaScript, we are writing the code in JSX, okay, which is you can say just a wrapper over JavaScript, and which allows you to write HTML code inside JavaScript functions. Okay, and then whenever we execute this file, it converts this JSX into pure JavaScript code. Again, I'll say into pure JavaScript code, and then link these JavaScript files to your HTML. Got it? And you get a full-fledged web page out of it. Okay, so all these files are adding some kind of functionality. At the same time, it is also adding UI. So mostly, whenever we talk about web dev in terms of HTML, CSS, we are like mostly trying to add functionality using JavaScript. But in React, what we are saying that using the power of React JSX, we can add the whole UI to the HTML document using JavaScript. Okay, so this is the like the a very bare bone concept of React, what it is doing behind the scenes. Got it? Okay. As you start writing more code, you will understand what is happening. So as I mentioned, as this far, that there is a certain HTML document where we are using this JavaScript code, where we are linking this JavaScript code, right? So this is what index.js is doing. Okay, so there's a script called React DOM. You can say there's a function called React DOM, which has a render function. So as the name suggests, it renders something. Okay. Now what it renders? It renders an app. Okay. So what is this app? This is the app file that we have imported, right? With this is there the app.js file. It adds some UI to our web page. Okay. We have imported this app file in a js.js file, and we have rendered it. You can, and where the location, this is the location. So where we have rendered this app.js file, or you can say where we have linked this app function, this is linked in the document dot get element by id root. So we have linked this app or we have added this UI inside the HTML tag with the ID root. Okay, so where does this document exist? This document exists in the public directory. Okay, so if you go to this HTML document and if you look closely, you'll see a root, right? This is a div. This is a div with a ID root, and we are saying that. So by default, whenever you say a document, it refers to this HTML file, right? It implicitly refers to this index.html file in the public directory. So this is a very important directory, and you cannot delete it. So this is an important directory, this public directory, which holds the HTML file where will we be linking all the code that we have written in this src file. Okay, so we are saying that we are adding this app functionality, app UI, okay, to this, to the element in the HTML file which has the ID root. So again, if we go to the HTML file, we can find that this div has an ID root, and we are directly adding functionality inside this div. Now, if we go to the browser and see the root, so if we close this, we can see this is the div with the ID root. And if we open it, what do you see? You can see div class equals to app, and this is the exact code that you have written in your app.js file, right? This is the exact code. Okay, so we are linking our JavaScript to this single HTML file. Okay, yeah. So I hope you got an overview what is React doing behind the scenes. Yeah, it's compiling again because I think I've added this comment. Now let me show you something. If I go on to this html dot index.html file in the public directory, and I say something like div, and I say this is my HTML template. Okay, and let's save it. Okay, it has built again, and let's see what has happened. Can you see you got this text? So basically what you're doing is we're using that index.html file as a template and using the functionality of React, which provides the functionality of JSX. And what is JSX? Basically adding HTML code inside JavaScript functions. We can directly import this UI inside our root div, okay, inside our template. So you just need to add whatever UI element you have to add to your website, and just put it inside this render function, and it renders. So if you remove this render app, okay, and save it, let's see. Now if we reload, okay, nothing happened. So we only got our HTML. Okay, so you see what is happening. And if we again do it, if we go Control Z and save it again, okay, now again if you reload it, you get this page again. And good thing is this index.js and index.csx is already added to your project, so you don't need to edit this. You can just go and start adding your code that you want to include in your HTML document. Okay, you can directly start writing that. You don't need to take care about adding this render function, it is already added. Yeah, so this was a short tutorial of what is happening behind the scenes in React. Now we'll talk more about after a short break.